Whether 11 hours or 11 years, Deltarune will be waiting. So take your time, wash your face, and get dressed. Deltarune as a game is unfinished. We know that the general outline, including major events, cutscenes, music, and battles, have been conceptualized since over a year before Chapter 2's release. So it's safe to say that although it hasn't been revealed to us, everything has already been tied together. In the recent release of the Winter 2025 newsletter, Toby says something during the Chapter 3 Lookback. Some people are of the opinion that having more things is always better, but when you think of the entire game with all its chapters as an overall experience, you really don't want any one chapter to bog it all down. So today, I want to think about Deltarune as a completed game, and as an overall experience, something a random person could play from start to finish with no external knowledge. For our sake, this hypothetical player we'll be following will not be spoiled on anything, will want to experience the majority, if not all of the game, and is willing to do repeat playthroughs to experience that. For the flow of the video, we're going to assume that for our player's first playthrough, they aim to get every recruit once that system is introduced in Chapter 2. Chapter 1 is played through normally. Chapter 2, they learn of the recruit system, they help their new friend Burley out of Queen's grasp, and live happily ever... Chris, what the fuck are you doing? For Chapter 3, we're going to assume our player doesn't S-rank either boards, because the entire S-rank music up to E-Ram themselves is at the end of the OST. This is consistent with Jewel and Spam to Neo, which makes me think Toby intends for the secret bosses to be found on a secondary playthrough. This is also why I personally consider E-Ram to be the secret boss of Chapter 3, but that's irrelevant. Wow, TV World sure was a blast. Anyway, after getting their ass beat, our player goes to Chapter 4. This time they do fight the secret boss. Gerson is the only secret boss that has their theme near the appropriate spot in the OST. It feels as if this boss in particular is intended to be easy to find, and I need an out for the player to obtain a Shadow Crystal. With this, our player has context for the missing Shadow Crystals in the main menu, and knows that there's a boss protecting them. For the sake of the video, they get an ending where Tenor, Jackenstein, and likely more are alive because they recruited everyone. Our player is now going for their second playthrough, this time attacking some people, not everyone though. Chapter 1 is the same, except they fight Jevil, and they find out they can skip straight to the Dark World. Convenient. Chapter 2 goes roughly the same up until Noelle. It's only a matter of time until they learn that she freezes enemies onto feet with Ice Shock. This will just be a neat quirk of Noelle's they learned that doesn't go any further. They follow Spamton's quest this time and end up defeating him. They decide to leave Birdley to unplug himself, close the fountain, and... oh shit, Birdley's armor's still busted. That's different. Chapter 3, our player S-ranks both boards, playing through the sword route. These are instructions that our player picks up on, with the context of the minigame mentioning places in future chapters, but they'll follow those next playthrough. Then Chapter 4 and on. They get a route where Tenor, Jackenstein, and others aren't alive because they were mean, very sad. Then they run it back until they figure out how to do the specifics of the weird route and play through that. This is how I believe Deltarune is intended to be played by someone on full release, and with this context, I want to discuss some things in the game that will make much more sense when thought of in this way. Recently, I watched a video by Shabunka on why the vessel won't be important. It's not what I'm arguing, and I'd even say I'm presenting some counter-evidence, but her video did spike a lot of thoughts about the vessel's role in the story for me, so I'm mentioning it. Reminder that this is all constructive discussion within the community, always be nice to each other. In her video, she mentions that you don't have to create a vessel if you start the game from Chapter 2 onwards. The game does assign you a default vessel, with all of the options chosen being the ones valued as 0 in the code, and interestingly, it doesn't give this vessel a name. But I think this isn't something we should really consider theory-wise. I feel I've established that this game is meant to be played from start to finish multiple times, and the decision to let people start from anywhere isn't one that's encouraged. If you don't have completion data for all chapters, then the game will always prompt you to finish where you left off. It feels akin to the ability to skip the overworld segments on repeat playthroughs, except this is of course not locked behind completing that chapter first. Regardless, Toby set up a fallback for the vessel. He also deliberately made one of the choices that's not the first option, 0, so all the values can stay as 0 while making a unique choice. This screenshot is from Why Does Chris Have a Save File in Deltarune by Half-Red Chaos. If you want to learn more about the coding and specifically the choices made in Chapter 1 when starting from Chapter 2 without completion data, then I highly encourage you to watch it. I also think the point of the vessel being forgettable doesn't make too much sense in this context of the game as a whole. If the vessel has a bigger role later on, then someone who forgot about their vessel by the time it appears would be reminded on a repeat playthrough when they have to create one. However, if the vessel never appears, the player would be instantly reminded on subsequent playthroughs that this weirdly went nowhere. Shabunka presented the idea that the vessel might just be a bit of missable dialogue if you interact with their discarded body or something. I think this is also plausible, as it still provides the player with that, oh, that's what that was, feeling on a repeat playthrough if they forgot about them. If the vessel has a significant role in the weird route, then all of these still work. By this time, the player has created their vessel thrice, or twice if they use their Jevil save file on the second time around, as there would be no reason to start Chapter 2 with a blank save rather than this one. If the vessel played a significant role in a normal route, then our player is likely emotionally attached to them in some way. If there's no payoff in a normal route, then by this point the player should understand why they weren't significant in those other routes and be satisfied with its role in the game as a whole. Speaking of multiple routes, did you know that Ralsei saying he wants to believe that there's more than one ending is the only time this idea is ever mentioned in-game? Of course, it's insinuated because of the prophecy, but it's also mentioned on the Steam page and on Deltarune's website in the FAQ. However, I propose to you the question, is this canon? Like, by Toby's definition of canon. In the May 2025 newsletter, which is when Spamton Sweepstakes got the update, Toby addresses the topic of the sweepstakes canonicity. He says, "I only consider anything in the game itself to be canon, so there's nothing critically important on there." I think Toby is referring to things depicting events in the game, rather than his statements in general. There's a clear distinction between these two, so I don't think this creates a paradox of his statement being untrustworthy and trustworthy in a loop. Either way, it's an interesting statement, because despite the site and all the links on it being non-canon, some still depict events and places in canon. So it's not that they're not canon, it's just that they're in a flimsy state of it. As in, they could be depicting things that have happened or will happen, but unless the game says as such, it's not certain and can be overwritten or retconned. This Steam page is interesting as well. The Deltarune's official website has an FAQ that says there is one ending, plain and simple. But this has a question mark. Perhaps it's talking about the game in its current state. The weird route and the main route both lead kind of to the same ending right now. Even if all of the endings are the same, we have different ways of getting there. We've already seen the consequences of our actions in both Jackenstein and Tenor being unsavable if you lose any recruits or if you fail to recruit A/specific darkness. Interestingly, with Chapter 3 giving us the ability to lose a recruit from Chapter 1, we've opened up the possibility of being able to lose recruits from past chapters. So as of now, it looks like the possible future routes will be all recruits, no recruits, mixed recruits, weird route, and then the modifier of beating all the secret bosses, able to be added onto any of those. At the end of Chapter 4, we also finally learn what these two hidden stats of Chris's are. However, these stats are bugged. If you slay one of these enemies while purifying the other, you get a purify stat of 2. I feel it's important to note as well that the Titan isn't purified. It seems to be sealed akin to a fountain, so that doesn't count to this. This could be intentional. I feel like someone would have caught this during testing. After all, there's only 3 outcomes to this fight that give Chris new stats. Also, during the sword rune in Chapter 3, this number goes up while the stat's name stays blank. The numbers here only seem to disappear after Chapter 3 is finished. So we have another system being set in place that seems to dictate how nice of a person you're being. Now, assuming you have a weird route save file, did you lose recruits from Chapters 3 and 4 while Noelle was gone? See, weird could actually be a modifier to these routes. You can recruit Wire, Task Manager, and Mouse Wheel from Chapter 2, then everyone from Chapters 3 and 4, all while doing the weird route. An interesting thing to note about Noelle is that she does not scale with the other team members. Of course, she hasn't made an official return, so it could be that she'll be scaled correctly when the time comes, but for now, across chapters her stats stay the same regardless of your route. To be fair, she still hits like a truck and can absolutely keep up in terms of damage. My point is to say, we don't even know at this point in the story if we'll have to recruit people to Castletown so that Noelle can play catch up on levels, or if recruits don't matter for specifically the weird route's outcome. For the record, I personally think it won't matter. Perhaps it makes some fights easier, but it's probably optional. Making someone play through at least 2 full chapters all over again to recruit people doesn't make sense for Toby when considering our player, especially since the sword route doesn't seem to mention this. So, recap. We have the recruit system and purify/slain systems both in place for us. We have a weird route modifier and potentially a shadow crystal modifier. Sword route is also tracked for Chris's damage against Tenor, so that might be another one that affects more things in the future. Perhaps it only comes into play in the future if you've also got the weird route modifier though? That's where I think I'll leave off. When talking about the game, I think it's important to think of it from Toby's perspective, or rather from the perspective of a player Toby is envisioning. Asking why has he fed this piece of information to us now is good to keep in mind too. Although the game is being released with future chapters in mind, it's clear that Toby is listening to the current fans and taking into account that the game is being released piece by piece. Anyways, what are your thoughts? How important will the vessel be? Should we trust the Deltarune FAQ and the Steam page? What will be considered a distinct route and what will be a sort of modifier? And do you agree with my assessment of how Toby intends the game to be played for someone like our player? As always, you can catch me on Twitch at Martian_Fox for when I record this footage, and you can join my Discord server where we've been having a lot of discussions and theorizing about Deltarune. Alrighty, I'm about 2,200 words into this, and that's going to be me for this video. Sayonara!